it does strike me as is kind of like, whoa, what the hell is happening when you have all the major social media outlets kind of in unison just deplatform a sitting president of the United States, where it's almost kind of, it makes me wonder, like, damn, we're at a point where, like, I understand they're private companies and everything like that, they have the right to do it, but it's like we're at the point now where the tech industry now decides for us, now decides for the American people, you know, if we're allowed to hear what the president says. You know,
I don't know.
It's like,
I think it's
kind of crazy.
It is. It's kind of crazy, but also it's like the only other president to even have Twitter was Barack Obama. Twitter hasn't been around that long.
Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it seems crazy just because like the time and like, I don't know. I think like in the grand scheme of things, it's not too crazy.
Yeah. I mean, look, do I think it's all about, to me, it's like a symbolic thing, because as you know, the whole deplatforming thing has been going on for a while. Like, it's obviously started, I think the first big thing was like, the first thing that everybody was talking about was Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, okay, so they take some.
But also it's like, sure, he's like quote unquote deplatformed, but is he really? He still finds his way onto every single platform. Like, he's still on Rogan, like I don't think
Alex Jones?
Alex Jones,
Oh, okay.
and like, you know, he's always saying he's banned on YouTube, but that's the only other place I've ever seen Alex Jones videos.
Yeah.
And they seem very up to date.
Yeah. No. He has his own like thing that he can communicate on.
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying that was the first example of like when everybody was talking about like, oh, they took him off, because they took other people off Twitter too, and random people that I can't think of. I think like Milo Yiannopoulos or something like that, and like Gavin McInnes and people like that. And you're sitting there, okay, these are like right wing people. You know, it's not all right wing people. There's left wing people, I think, that got deplatformed, I think. But like, you're thinking, okay, these are just people that got taken off, and that's fine. And people go, well, you know, that they're just like the fringe. They're the fringe people. So like, we're just going to remove the fringe people. And then the argument pushing back was like, well, you know, once we can start removing the fringe people, you know, you've kind of set the precedent for basically you can remove anybody. And again, I understand that it's a private company, they can do what they want. But clearly now, when you get to the point where now they can take the actual literal president of the United States and take him off, it's like, oh, okay, so it is kind of getting to the point. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where now all of a sudden it's not just some crazy right-wing lunatic or something like that. Now it's an actual president. Now it's the actual president. And that's based off of what I consider to be, here's what I find, here's the only thing, because I agree with you on
I just don't think it's like any sort of, it's not like a violation of freedom of speech.
It's not.
It's just like, I don't know. I think Twitter just doesn't want to be brought into court for like war crimes, dude.
Yeah,
like, because literally, like, I'm sure, like 5 or 10 years from now, they probably could be.
Yeah. Well, here's what it's not even really the Twitter thing. It's not really the Facebook and Instagram thing. The biggest thing that I thought was odd was where now this is what kind of got me to the point where I was like, because when I saw Twitter, it's like, you know, who fucking cares? Like, I go on Twitter or whatever. The president gets removed from Twitter. Who fucking cares? But then you get to, you heard about like that new app Parler or whatever. Did you hear about that at all?
Oh, that's like the right wing Twitter.
It's basically, right? I guess it's mostly, I would imagine it's mostly right wing, probably 90%. I've never been on it. I don't fucking know.
I'm pretty sure it's 100% right wing.
Well, I think it's
I'm sure maybe there is like 10% like left wing people on there trolling.
Yeah, probably.
But like, yeah.
So I don't want to say all, because I'm sure there are people that are just going on there to see what it's about. But I think their whole thing was like, we're just a free, quote unquote, free speech, you know, outlet for people to go on, where we're not going to be banning people and taking people down for community violations. It's just an open, you know, forum for people to say and just network however they want. And then you had, so that's like, you have Google Play and remove them from the App Store. Apple remove them from the App Store. Amazon not only remove them from their App Store, but Amazon owns like a large percentage of like the servers that even people use to like host sites.
Yeah, AWS.
Yeah, and they don't even allow Parler to use the servers or anything like that. And that was at the point where it was like, and look, the justification is always going to be, and this is I guess what I get to when I talk about like the slippery slope thing, because in any time and instance, you could look at what happened at the Capitol building and say, that's an example of, this, that, the other thing. But my question is, the justification is that Trump's rhetoric about the election being fraudulent is what ultimately culminated in a large group of people being motivated to storm the Capitol, right?
Yeah.
The question is, how do you define, I guess, because up until now, there's always been this thing saying like, okay, free speech is X, Y, Z, unless you're inciting violence. If you're calling for violence, that's when it gets struck out. If you're trying to incite a riot, if you're trying to do that. I'm not aware of Donald Trump ever doing anything to actually, I don't think he planned on that. I don't think anyone outside of like the fringe groups who probably organized that under wraps or whatever planned on that. But then the narrative becomes that it was Trump's rhetoric that caused that, which to me, honestly, sounds kind of ironic considering that for the past 4 years prior, you had major mainstream media outlets claiming that the 2016 election was fraudulent or that it was hacked or there was collusion or anything like that. Not just a couple fringe people. Turn on CNN, turn on MSNBC, turn on anything, listen to anything. That narrative went not just, the 4 weeks between the election and the inauguration. That went on up until like last year.
Yeah.
3 years into the presidency, all kinds of people, not just fringe people, like I said, major media outlets were delegitimizing that election. Yeah. And if something would have spurred out of that, where people decided to do something like that, which luckily they didn't, you could have easily carried that argument and been like, well, it was the mainstream media pushing this narrative that our election was hacked by foreign people and Trump colluded and blah, 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 blah. That caused this violence. I just find it odd that now we are at the point where we can say that if you say something against this narrative, we can now just connect the dots and say, well, that led to this, and now you're not allowed to say anything like that anymore. And that, to me, I guess, is what I'm talking about, the slippery slope. Where you look at what happened last week, and it sucks, but at the same time, it's like, how far are we going to take this? Because now you're not now it's one thing to say, hey, we're Twitter, and we don't want you to be saying shit like that on our platform. And we are a private business, and we have every right to say who can and cannot be on our platform and who can say what and where.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But now you're talking about basically a small group of tech companies that are able to not only enforce what's on their platforms, but now make it impossible, virtually impossible, for any other platform to come up that might allow it. And that, to me, crosses the bridge from, is this a free market thing? It's a free market thing when you say, hey, this is my company, I don't want you doing that shit on my company. It's a whole different thing when a large group of dominating monopolistic companies team up together and say, we're not even like, it used to be a thing where we'd say, hey, if you don't like Twitter, get the hell off Twitter and make your own Twitter. Now, they tried it. Now they're saying you can't even make your own Twitter. You can't even do that. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
That to me is where it just crosses into a weird territory for me. I don't want to normalize that, I guess is what I'm saying. Right now, it seems fine, I guess, to a lot of people because of everything else we've seen for the past year. But when you start, it all comes down to when you start making it a normal thing to say that any type of, like, once you allow the gap to be, if you say this, it could ultimately lead to this. Therefore, anything that you say that we find that we can link to that, we're going to say you can't say that. And I don't want to be sitting there going, okay, so if somebody questions this or questions that, then we're going to automatically link that to, well, this could ultimately do this, because that's how censorship, again, right now, it's still a very gray area because obviously, they're still private companies, but at the same time, it's like, that's where the vast majority of people are communicating. That's where the vast majority of people are at. And so it's one thing to just say you can't be on that. But then once you say, we're not even going to, we, the big companies that control everything, aren't even going to allow you to make your own thing.
Well, you're just saying Amazon banned them. They could probably go to any other web host server. And yeah, I get that
Until
the app
those
stores
companies
took them down or whatever, but also it's like they'll probably be able to find some. They'll you know, do the classic thing of overseas exporting the work overseas.
Yeah. Well, I think there just needs to be a link between. We look at whether you agree with it or not, whether you think the election was fraudulent or not, whether you like Trump or not. That's a whole irrelevant to me at this point. What I think should be acknowledged is that this is an election in which Donald Trump received 75 million votes or something like that. Joe Biden received more than that. Both of them received more votes in this election than any other presidential candidate in the history of elections.
Yeah.
So that means that Donald Trump, outside of Joe Biden, received more votes for president than any other person who's ever ran for president in American history. And so to attack the narrative of 75 million people who voted in that direction and treat that the same way you would treat some fringe lunatic like Alex Jones, to link that to me seems kind of like, that's where I go like, wait a second. I could understand if it's just some fucking Milo Yiannopoulos type of troll that is just going out and saying shit to piss people off. But you're forgetting that these are two people that half the country, literally half the voting population was on his side. And now you have a small group of unelected people that pretty much control the internet for all intents and purposes between the lot of them that are now deciding, hey, I know half of America voted in this direction, but we, the tech companies, are going to say, no, you can't even, we're not even going to, you know what I mean? We don't even think you should be allowed to hear what he says.
But also, you know, you always talk about free market and everything. Like, then that just opens up half of the country to stop using those services and start their own and make the next fucking Silicon Valley in Idaho or some bullshit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that was what I was thinking before. And then once this whole thing about them not even allowing, like, that's just really where I thought they crossed the line. Like, it's just so weird to say that.
Also, it's probably going to be a thing now that it's in the spotlight. Like, I think, like, I'm not arguing against any of the shutdowns or bans or anything. I don't really give a shit. I didn't even know what Parler was until this week. And also, it's like, really, like, you're going to try to beat Facebook or Twitter. One company tries to do that like every other year.
Yeah.
And they get buzzed for like 3 weeks and then it gets shut down because they don't have enough money. It's not going to work. Like, you got to create the next thing that doesn't exist yet. That's how Facebook became popular. That's how Twitter, Instagram, all that shit. I guess Facebook just ripped off MySpace, but that's besides the point.
They beat them.
I just I don't know. I think this is going to be an issue for like the next couple of weeks, but once Biden gets in and things settle down a little bit, I don't think it's going to be like a lasting trend of just like outside of like shit that they should shut down. Like, let's say fucking, you know, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, or whatever, when like ISIS was starting out and they figured out they were using like Twitter DMs and shit.
Yeah.
They got kicked off Twitter.
Okay.
Like, what do you feel about that?
Well, again, I'm on the same page with you when it comes to a private company being able to exercise its right to enforce whoever uses their platform. Yeah. I don't disagree with you on that. My only point of contention was, like you were talking about, why don't they just start their own thing? When you get to a point, because we all understand how fucking money works and how everything works like that.
Yeah, I understand that they have to start from zero, but also if it's a thing where, like, if we're trying to break this down into, okay, the big tech corporations are more left leaning, and they're sort of suppressing right voices right now in a way. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a right leaning fucking billionaire, which I'm sure all of them are, like, especially just for tax reasons alone.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just be like, oh, okay, fuck, I could make a quick another billion if I just invest in buying a server farm and letting everyone fucking migrate over real quick. It'll be like a gym. I'll set it up. They'll migrate over. They won't do shit with the website. It'll fail, but I'll still get my money.
Yeah. I understand a lot more about computers than I do. I don't really fucking know how any of that shit works. I was just looking at it from the standpoint of like, a lot of these companies will only make a move like that because they don't want to be the company that didn't make the move like that. You know what I mean? Like, let's say Twitter was the first one to pull the trigger on deplatforming Donald Trump. At that point, Facebook and Instagram, who are the same thing, Facebook owns Instagram, they're going, well, we don't want to be the platform that doesn't do that. You know, I mean, it's kind of like the same thing you saw with the Black Lives Matter stuff earlier in the year with all the NFL leagues. Like, nobody wanted to be the league that didn't start making the whole thing about, like, you know, having people link up and do stuff. The Major League Baseball didn't want to be the one league that was like, we're just going to keep on just playing baseball if that's cool with everybody else. You know what I mean? So, and that's why it pissed me off watching that, because you could just tell that all this shit was so canned and phony because they were literally only doing it to you know, cover their asses. And so I don't think that the owners of the Major League Baseball really actually gave a fuck that much. I don't think the owners of the NFL really gave a shit that much. I think that every single major corporation, I don't think that Nike really gives a shit that much when they're paying people slave wages in Indonesia and then they want to advocate for human rights in America. I don't think they really actually care that much. I think they're doing things to save face and to put out an image to the public. And I think part of that pressure to put out that image to the public is when Twitter does something, Facebook and Instagram don't want to be the people who don't do it, because then people can say, well, Twitter must be, you know, endorsing hate speech and white supremacy and things like that. So now now Facebook's got to do it or something like that. And so, Amazon made the next step and said, well, we're not even going to allow any of these platforms. It's not even people now. It's not even people. You're not saying this person can't use our server. You're saying anyone who wants to build anything that has to do with anything that doesn't align with what we think, we're not even going to allow it. We're not even going to allow it. And so then Amazon does that.
I don't know. I think you're blowing it up more than it actually is, like the scale of things. Like, yes, their apps got taken down, but I'm sure the website's still up. I'm sure they have a mobile version. I'm sure if people are actually dedicated to that shit, they're actually on it or donating to it, like the few amount of people that actually donate to Wikipedia. Like, I think, I don't know. It might just be not as easily acceptable or like whatever, but at the end of the day, like, I remember like starting like this video project we're on, this like super long one about hunting, going into like hunting groups and shit, like me just asking for help or like any whatever, they'd just be like, oh, you joined, this is your first post and you're asking to see clips of people hunting, or if you want to be in a video, get this soy boy out of here, all this shit. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, they don't want new people coming in? Like, what? And I think, if anything, the people who are on that website, they probably don't want like Parler to be on the fucking front page of iTunes or whatever. Like when they open the phone, they don't want like, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like they're just creating like their safe space, you know?
Yeah. I think with your gun thing, you probably are dealing with a lot of fucking gun nuts that are all super paranoid that they're going to come to take our guns. And they thought you were probably some kind of fucking like undercover op, like, hey, send me some videos of you guys using guns and stuff. I'm new to this whole thing. I don't know. I'm not saying obviously that's not what you're doing, but I think that there's a lot of people in those fucking gun groups that like, they're those type of people. They're those type of people who think they probably have like fucking cans of shit in their basement for when the apocalypse happens and shit.
Like, that same mindset of person is the one who's pissed off at Twitter and going to Parler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel bad for that type of person, because at the end of the day, that type of mentality and shit is very unhealthy. So if you know, getting people's access to that gets cut in half a little bit, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I actually
It's
I feel the
like-
same way about those.
It's
like,
just like a thing where like I understand like the slippery slope mentality or whatever, and like, but at the end of the day, it's like if something is like if people were on Twitter every day, fucking nonstop, just like harass. I mean, I guess that's a bad example because they already are.
yeah, that's
Um.
that's all Twitter is really. But.
Fuck yeah, I don't know where to go from there then.
No, it's fine. Look. I hear what you're saying, and this is the problem that I always run into is because I never want to sound like I'm some crazy conspiratorial guy who's thinking, "Oh man, if they could do this, then just imagine what's going to happen." You know what I mean? I
That
don't
is
want to.
most of your arguments.
That is
though.
most of my arguments. But I will say, in my defense, a lot of stuff that's happening literally right now are things that if I would have said them last year would have sounded ridiculous. But then, lo and behold, all of a sudden they do start to happen and they do start to become normal. And now things that we thought were insane a year ago are now perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable. So I never want to discount the slippery slope argument in that, yes, one day it starts with these rogue people, we're not letting them use their platform. Next it goes, this guy who is elected by the American public for the past 4 years is not allowed to use our platform. Mm-hmm. Then it goes, if anybody wants to make a platform that hosts people that say anything that doesn't go along with what we want on our platforms, we're going to collude together and make it so that they can't even do that.
Yeah.
And then,
but that's also,
and that's just what happens already.
I think that's just what happens already. That's what happened. But I think that is that company's right still. Just because, like the same thing I was saying earlier with like kind of jokingly about like Twitter being brought up for war crimes over this shit in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Like it, at the end of the day, it all comes down to fucking, they don't want to get sued. Like, let's say Parler was the place that, and I don't know, I'm just saying this out of my ass, but like if Parler was the place where people met and discussed the shit that happened last Wednesday, and that's where it was all planned and shit, then it's like, okay, yeah, shut it down. Like, we understand you taking it down.
Yeah.
But, I forgot where I was going.
I mean, but think about this. Think about this. No, it's fine. Think about this. How many of those fucking plans do you think could have been emailed back and forth on Gmail? How many of those fucking things could have people corresponded over various other? Could have been phone calls on AT&T? Could have been fucking anything. There's to use this standard that if your platform has, like, if there's a platform in which people utilized to communicate, then therefore that platform is responsible, is almost like I just said, like, you know, so now Gmail's bad if somebody sent an email when they were corresponding about how to organize a thing. Gmail's responsible? No, clearly not. And everybody understands that. So just to me, I just think that it always becomes this like next step, where it's like, here we are, great. And right now we say that these ideas are unacceptable. And most people are going, yeah, well, yeah, I disagree with those ideas. So I'm totally cool with that being stomped out. But what happens when it's your ideas? What happens when, I'm just saying, like, the window of things that are now being deemed to be ridiculous, it's gone from you tell people to go out and riot to you say things that causes other people to want to go and riot now, or you say things that disagree with the narrative, and then that causes people to get angry, and then eventually somebody organize. Now that's off limits, and it's like, so where do we draw the line? At what point do we not just say?
I think the line got drawn when people went out and rioted.
Yeah, but that could happen. I guess what I'm saying is, so if somebody goes on and tweets, I don't know. I feel like we're both making like.
Yeah, I think we both kind of get what each other is saying.
Yeah.
But we both don't want to be wrong.
No, I don't.
I know, I'm just kidding.
I don't. To me, it's not that I really, to be honest, I tried looking into it a lot, and I'm not super invested in it. Honestly, I mean, when you texted me about the thing last week, I wasn't even aware of how serious it was because I've been making a point of it to not be that involved with it because it's just becoming so mentally taxing to constantly be on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not invested in being right. I actually hope I'm not right because the future that I'm describing sucks. But I guess I'm just putting out there into the universe that I don't like the idea of not considering a possibility. And I just think it's something that when you see these things happening, I think it's a healthy level of awareness to be like, wow, okay, now this is what we're doing. Okay, I see what we're doing now. And then it's like at a certain there's got to be a point. There's got to be a point where people go, okay, wait, what are we doing now? And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think maybe for other people it's further down the line, but to me, I don't know. I don't see it going any other direction. I feel like that's when you look across history and you look across anywhere in the world, it's never this blatant thing. It's never, when you look at any type of country, I mean, we live in America, and so we don't see like the things we hear about in other countries like China, the second biggest economy in the world, going on right now where people are being, there's fucking genocides going on and people are being censored and you can't speak out against this. You can't say this against the supreme leader or whatever.
Water parks are open.
Things like that. It's like these are real things. It's not like I'm speaking like I watched a movie yesterday and I'm like, oh, I saw this fucking, Manchurian Candidate, blah, blah. It's like, you can take a flight out to China right now and see what I'm talking about. You can go to Russia, go to the countries where people literally don't have the freedom of expression because there's only one line, one narrative that you're allowed to say, and anything else has been deemed dangerous. And at that point, all it takes is who's doing the deeming. And if we set the precedent that these major multi-billion dollar organizations are able to determine for us what is acceptable to speak about, that means where it's like, well, how else do you think it happened? Do you think people just woke up one morning in China and somebody says, hey, you can't talk about shit anymore, and everybody just went, okay. Didn't happen like that. Slow progression, just slowly normalizing more and more. Oh, well, look, okay. Yeah, we can't say that anymore. Cool, I got it.
Yeah, but I feel like that's such a different scenario because for China, it was always kind of like a ruling class and like kind of emperor / dictatorship type of deal. I think it's easier from there. I'm sure it was even more restricted before, and now it's probably opened up to the point where it's like, hey, we don't have a emperor anymore, but I don't say anything bad about
the party,
Winnie the Pooh or whatever. I think since they're kind of like getting less restricted on their experience, I'm sure it feels like things are getting lifted and lessened, and I think that's easier to live with. If we as a country, and we kind of got hit with it a little bit when like the Patriot Act happened and after 9/11, I think that's what I feel like that's something that you should be more worried about than the internet shit. Is another Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act thing never really, I was too young to care at that time.
Yeah, true.
And we grew up at a time where it was just normal.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we were this age in 2002, I would have been having the same rant.
Yeah, for sure.
Guarantee it.
Yeah, but I think since we're in a, quote unquote democracy, I think it'd be harder to get. I think more people would speak out if we started getting more and more restricted. I think it'd be more of a shock to our system rather than taking the bandages off.